The Toronto Raptors are a playoff team. Say it with me. The Toronto Raptors are a playoff team. Now, I get a lot of takes wrong, but one take that I was adamant on, and I'm sure everyone else should have been adamant on it as well, is that this team would bounce back. Last year was not a reflection. They didn't even play in Toronto. They were injury-riddled all season long. Pascal Siakam was not at his best. All of these factors, and now all of a sudden, we're seeing, they still haven't been healthy all season, but we're starting to see what this team can do. 20-17. They're 7th in the Eastern Conference. They're on a win streak of 6 games. They have the potential Rookie of the Year. He's at least in the mix right now. And then you have 2 guys who are playing like all-stars, with Fred VanVleet, an absolute bona fide all-star. If he's not an all-star, we should all riot, because there's no questions. He's an all-star. Pascal Siakam is starting to play like one again. Not to mention, you've got OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr. This team has some depth in their starting lineup. They have some scoring. They've got it all. This is a good team. This is a good team. Now, before I get into what makes them a good team, if you could drop a like on the video, if you're new to the channel, or if you haven't already, subscribe. That would be much appreciated. Not going to waste any more of your time. Let's look at what the Raptors have done recently, because it's recently that they've been healthy, and it's no coincidence that in those games they've been healthy, well, they've been good. They're 6-0 in their last 6 games, and then if you go a bit further, they're 9-3 in their last 12 games. However, one of those losses was against Cleveland, and you see the roster that they had that game, and the other 2 losses were narrow losses against Philly with no Fred, OG, or Pascal, and Brooklyn with no OG. Basically, when healthy, the Raptors are the greatest team of all time. Not quite, because for full transparency, they have also played some injury-riddled teams like the Jazz, who were fielding the Salt Lake City Jazz, or whatever you want to call it. But the reality is the Raptors have been one of the better teams in the NBA since getting healthy, and you can see that when they're on the floor together. You can see that this team is functioning at a high level, and funnily enough, it has actually been the offense that has led to this, because if there was one thing that I was expecting this year, it was a really good defense, but it's been the offense recently that has picked up, and the reason for this is 2 guys, and I want to start with one guy in particular. He has been incredible. Fred VanVleet. From Mr. Undrafted to now playing like an MVP recently. Does that sound like a stretch? If you're a Raptors fan, you probably realize that's not a stretch. But let me just state my case as to why he's playing like an MVP level player. Just the last 10 games. On the season, he's an all-star. But the last 10 games, Fred VanVleet is averaging 27.5 points, nearly 8 assists, nearly 5 rebounds, shooting 46, 44, 98 shooting splits on 12 threes a game, mind you, and he's only averaging 1.5 turnovers. 1.5 turnovers, playing good defense. The Raptors have a 9-1 record in that time. That's MVP numbers. Let's just talk about what he's doing well, because if you look at the improvements, obviously he's shooting the 3-ball well. Like, we've known that, but he's gone to a different level now. He's just shooting it with more confidence. He's making more shots. He's always been a good 3-point shooter, but he's just stepping into them with more confidence. I don't think there's too much that needs to be said about that. But there are 2 aspects of his game that have really improved. It's his ability to finish at the rim. In previous seasons, he was one of the worst in the league, which isn't particularly surprising. He's 6 foot tall. He's not crazy athletic. What else do you expect? But now he's started to finish a little bit better. He's not using some crazy athleticism, as I said. He's just being a bit craftier around the rim. He's using his body. He's using the angles, and he's just finishing at a higher level, which is good. But also, his mid-range has been a lot better as well. So he's starting to incorporate these different elements of his game. So he's not as heavily dependent on that 3-ball as he has been. But at the same time, he's shooting the 3-ball at a career-high clip and a career-high rate. He's doing it fantastically. So every aspect of Fred's game has been good. Not to mention, he's a lockdown. He's a really good defender. There are people campaigning for him to be an all-defensive level player. Maybe, but all I know is he's an all-star. He's playing like an MVP. Get that through your heads. Fred VanVleet is playing like an MVP these last 10 games. Let's hope that can continue. And he's closing out games. Against the Pelicans, back-to-back big, deep threes. That sounded weird, but back-to-back threes against them to close out the game. Not to mention the advanced stats are just absolutely unfathomable. I'll put them up here, but they're absolutely unfathomable. You can see that right here. But let's not waste all the time on Fred VanVleet. As good as he has been, we got to talk about some other players, and in particular, the other half of the all-star duo, Pascal Siakam. He has been playing arguably the best basketball of his career recently. I stress that, just recently, not in the season, but the last 6 or 7 games, he's putting up some monster numbers, and there's a few factors for this. For one, he's probably the healthiest he has been in a while after shoulder surgery and getting a chance to find his rhythm, and he has found that rhythm, in particular in the mid-range. We know Siakam's three-point shooting has dipped off since that All-Star season, and that has been a struggle for him. He's getting back there, but his mid-range shooting has started to come along. Particularly recently, he's starting to shoot at a good clip, at a good percentage, and he's just been more effective, rising up, getting to his spots, which just allows him to operate from the post as a playmaker, as a scorer, isolation when the Raptors need someone to get them a bucket, because he is still that isolation scorer, and he's still effective. We know he's going to get downhill. We know he's going to finish at the rim. That doesn't really need to be said. We know he's going to do that. He'll get to the rim. He'll get to the free throw line. But what he's doing as a playmaker has been impressive. What he's doing as a mid-range shooter, the game seems to have slowed down for Pascal Siakam after last year, in which it just wasn't his best year. He'd admit that. Everyone knows that. But now he's getting back to his best. Obviously, he's played some small ball 5 as well, which has been interesting. And to credit him on that, he's been rebounding the ball at a career high rate as well. And he's had some huge rebounds in games when it's been needed. It's nearly a 19 rebound game against the Clippers, some double-digit huge rebound games as well. So all across the board, Pascal Siakam, along with Fred VanVleet, have been playing out of their minds recently. And those two are the biggest reasons. There's no doubt about that. They are the biggest reasons for the win streak and the Raptors turning their season around. But the thing is, why I'm so bullish on Toronto is you've got these two guys playing like all-stars, but if these two guys fall off, you have 3 other guys in the starting lineup that are more than capable of taking the slack. With this small ball lineup, you have Gary Trent Jr., who is the 5th option pretty much now, a very solid 5th option. You have Scotty Barnes, who was playing out of his mind for 30 games prior to this. He's dropped off a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then you have OG Anunoby, who just 25 games ago before he got injured was the first option on this team as a scorer, putting up routinely 25 points a night. This is why I'm bullish on this team. It's not just a 2-man show. From 1 through to 5, on any given night, you could have multiple of these guys drop 20, you could have multiple of these guys drop 30, like we've seen in some of these games with Siakam and VanVleet. They've got the depth in that starting lineup. Keyword, in that starting lineup. I'll talk about the issue of the bench in just a second. But if we do say one potential downfall of what's going on with Siakam and Fred being so incredibly good recently, Scotty Barnes has dropped off a little bit. His responsibility has gone down. Now, this is a rookie who was not expected to average the 17 points a game that he started the season. He was not expected to be this good. If Scotty averages 10 points for the rest of the season, which I'm not saying he will, I don't expect that. I expect him to be better than that. But if he averages 10 points for the rest of the season, he's shown more than enough. He's shown all you could have wanted as a Raptors fan, from developing a 3-point shot, developing an off-the-dribble shot, playmaking, defense. He's got better at literally every part of the game. And if he has to take a backseat to 2 guys that are playing like all-stars, and if that results in this team being a top 6 seed or whatever they're going to end up as, then I think that's fine. That's not the biggest issue, but that's just worth noting. Anyways, what is a big issue, a definite issue, is the bench production. I don't know if I can even say his name around here. I don't know what's going on. I don't keep up with all the rumors in Toronto, but he would be nice. You know the guy who I'm talking about, the guy that was traded for Kyle Lowry. Yeah, that old guy. He would be nice, but unfortunately, they're not using him because he is exactly what they need. They need a backup guard that can really provide something. If you want to know why those on-off numbers with Fred VanVleet are just ludicrous, it's because you've got no one really coming off the bench that is providing that consistency. I like what Delano Banton can do going forward, but he's not there yet. You need someone that can be that guy. In terms of options, maybe a DeLon Wright. I've looked at in Atlanta. He hasn't been doing a ton. He's still getting minutes, but his production has been down. I'm sure they'd be willing to part ways with him. I watched him in Detroit just last year. He was fantastic. He was really good for the Pistons. So maybe he could have a homecoming going back to Toronto, the place he started. That's just an idea. I'm not saying it has to be an absolute star. It's not going to be likely. But if you can get someone who's solid off the bench and then maybe in the offseason make some more significant moves, look at a center, look at getting a really solid backup guard, that's probably where Toronto have to go next. But if you're trying to win enough games this season to make a playoff push, which I suspect they are, they've got their young core, I don't think they need to get another top pick, then probably getting another backup guard would be really handy. And Delon Wright is an idea. There are some other ones. There's quite a few on the market. There are some guys you could go after, but that's just my idea. That's probably the weakness of Toronto, but right now, they've been elite offensively. Fred VanVleet, just to clarify, playing like an MVP. Pascal Siakam playing like an all-star. OG Anunoby is going to get back into rhythm as well. He's had some decent games. And this team has a good, balanced starting lineup. The defense, I think, is only going to get better. I think that's going to click eventually as well. Yeah, this is a playoff team. I will stand by that. I've stood by that, and it's looking pretty good so far. So I'm happy to have been high on the Raptors, and I'm happy that once they've got healthy, they're starting to turn it around. That's all I've really got to say. Have a great day.